Hello and welcome to another video tutorial for HearFormPRO 2018. In this video we'll be looking at the demographics area on the HearForm home screen. As Willy Wonka once said, we have so much time and so little to see. You might have noticed that I've removed this area off to the right hand side that used to contain the documents area. That'll make it a little bit less cluttered for our tutorial today. I'm also going to zoom in by clicking this button right here, and that'll make it easier for us to see what we previously called Section A. Again, a lot to cover, so I'll just get started, and we'll start on the upper left-hand area here. In order to insert a photograph for the patient, you can do so by clicking the button over here on the left-hand side that looks like a camera. When you do, it'll automatically turn the camera on your iPhone or your iPad. You can take a photograph of the patient, and if you're not happy with it, discard it and take another one, and that will be stored not just to help you to put a face with a name, but that photograph can also carry to a variety of reports and agreements and that sort of thing. So if you want to use that, it's kind of nice. Again, as we mentioned before, the patient's first name and last name is stored at the top. I can click in that area, and as soon as I do, it places the program into search, query, or what we call find mode. I can then enter a patient's name, such as Mary, and it'll pull up one or more records matching that particular criteria. Let's go back to our sample patient, and as we scroll down a little bit, I can hide or show the colors. If I don't want to see those colors, I might want to still keep the circles and the ability to actually interact with those colors, but I may or may not want to see those colors. You can also see the description of what that means for each color as you designate a patient based on a color. And then again, as we mentioned, the paper and pencil will pop up a screen that allows you to type in the color and what the meaning is right there. You want to drag a color, for example, from here to here, and that will change the color simply by dragging it there. So we'll close that. Here we can click on the letter A to bring up all patients whose last names start with A, F, H, etc. Again, we'll go back to S. And then it gives me this list on the left, which I can again omit individual records simply by clicking that. You'll notice that there are 78 records who match that criteria, a last name that starts with the letter S. And by omitting, I'm not deleting the patient, but now we're down to 76, 75, etc. So it omits or removes them temporarily from what we call the found set of isolated records. So once again, let's pull back up our sample patient, and I'm going to go back again to the buttons here, which is going to be the default. So we also have off to the right hand side the ability to click a button and it will show information regarding when the record was created, who created it, who last modified it, and when. And then we also have a little button here that pops up a preferences area. Now I've already opened a window because that pop-up window is not movable. Let me show you what I mean because it'll come in handy later. I can't move that. That card window, as it's called, kind of slightly dims out the background, and it really places focus where we want it on the window itself. And yes, I can click a button right here, for example, to show or hide the color circles, but I can't very well teach you what's going on behind that. So I've just temporarily given myself a separate window here, and I have it off to the side, as you can see. It looks slightly different, but now you can at least see better that when I click or hide the alphabet buttons here, you can see those a little bit better. I can also hide the pronunciation buttons here, and as you'll see in a minute, that allows you to enter a pronunciation for a patient's name if it's complicated. Let me scroll over a little bit here, this button here to show or hide the address icon. Not a big deal, but that allows us to add a guarantor. And then as we further look at a few things, let me scroll back, back here and hide the field editing icon. So you can see a few buttons, these little pencils and papers icons disappear, because once you've entered that information and set it up, you may say, you know, it's a little bit cluttered or busy looking with those, so I'm going to hide them. So hide or show those, and then we can do the same thing over here on the right side in the custom field area. We can show or hide those buttons as well. Once you set them up, you may want to leave them. Something you don't see now, but some of our customers may want the ability to quickly pull up the HearFlix, HearDocs, MyFlix, and MyDocs area. That does add some color on there that you may or may not want, so we give you the ability to hide or show those. I'm going to hide them now. And in the same way, the tooltips area. For example, if I want to hold the mouse over something like here, it says click this button to find patients' birthdays. Well, if I click the hide button, then I do not see that message anymore. We may have missed a few in building the program, so if you happen to see a tooltip pop up, even though you've turned that off, my apologies, but generally it's going to hide the tooltips for you. And in the same way, let's look at some of those dots. Right here, when I hold the mouse over here, a message will pop up off to the side of the dot, and so I can hide or show those by clicking this button here. And then finally, we're just getting started with the training materials on this brand new program, but eventually we're going to have buttons near a variety of areas in the program. Look at the birthday area over here. Right now there's nothing on that, but when I click this button here, notice there's a question mark. And you'll be able to see question marks all over the screen, which again makes it cluttered, but when you're first learning the program, that might have value because you can then click on the button and watch a training video specifically for that particular area. You'll also have some written text that might help as well. But again, after you learn the program, no need to have a bunch of question marks all over the place, so we'll uncheck that. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and close that window, and we'll continue on with the rest of the Section A. You filled out a form on the internet probably many times, but this is very similar. You would enter information about the patient by using the tab key on your keyboard. And let's just talk about this real quick. For example, if Jennifer pronounced her name Yennefer, or her last name Sabier maybe was pronounced Sabo or something, you may want to put a pronunciation there. If there is something in the field, you'll notice that it colors the icon lavender. Otherwise, it's just going to be white and gray like that. So that gives you an indication that maybe you need to look behind the scenes and see how he or she likes to pronounce their name. Again, the same is true with the junior or senior or something else that might follow the name. You can also edit lists, and we'll have a separate video explaining how to work with lists. But if you ever see the word edit at the bottom of a list, it looks real small here, but you'll be able to edit that list. This area is the medical record number. When I remove the numbers themselves, let's just remove it, you'll see the title of the field below it. As soon as I enter a number, then that title goes away, but then after a while you'll learn that that is in fact the medical number field. To the upper left of that area, I can click this button, and this is where I can enter a patient type. If I want to designate each patient in a particular group, I can do one or more. So for example, this may be a competitive user who purchased at Costco, and they're also a prospect, or they may also be a current user that now they're coming to you for their services or something like that. Now you can adjust those choices differently than some other drop-down list, so you can click this button and set up your patient type lists with a brief description and then also the other description off to the side there. So you can set that up at your convenience. Let's go ahead and close that. And the same is very similar to, or the same is true for the status of the patient. I can set up this area here and categorize the patient as maybe inactive and or deceased. You can do two different things here, but we'll just call this patient active. And that will help you later in a list to isolate all patients based on a particular status and or type. Off to the side, we have an area where you can add one or more guarantors, a primary and a secondary. You can click the button to say, I want to send all correspondence to my primary, or let's say it's a wife and a mother and a father, or a son and a daughter, or something like that. You can decide who the guarantor is, and if you want to remove that and send it to neither, then just check that box there and it would remove that. So I have some sample data here that doesn't quite make sense, but just for testing purposes, but you can go ahead and enter the salutation first, middle, last, or excuse me, not middle, but first, last, street, etc., and any comment that you'd like in the section below. So we'll go ahead and close that. Then we have the address of the patient. As soon as you enter a zip code, it will automatically pull up the city and state, but if the city and state doesn't match, you can click this button right here, and it will do a search for you out of a large group of zip codes that are in the system, and you can change the name of the city. For example, if it's not really Boca Raton but something right next to it, you can then change that to reflect the accurate name of the city, and it'll be that way from that point forward. So that's simply by entering the zip code there. Again, pulling in the city and state automatically, but you can manually enter that as well. We can mark the patient no mail. That will not automatically exclude them from mailings, but it makes it very easy to exclude them by running a script or a macro, removing all those patients who are marked no mail from the list. This button to the right will pull up a map of the patient's address, and I can show directions on the map by clicking a button, and it will pull that up in a browser showing the patient, perhaps you're on the phone with them and you want to explain how to get from their location to your location. So that's our map area. I'm going to close that by clicking this small X in the upper right hand corner. I can also add multiple addresses, multiple emails, multiple phone numbers by clicking a button to the far right. And in this case, for additional addresses, I can put in the patient's normal address there and rank that, perhaps rank number 1. I can then add a secondary address. Maybe the patient is a snowbird and they reside at address A from January through May, and then from June through December at a different address, etc. So you can set up an unlimited number of addresses, but you'll want to rank them because the highest ranked address is what will be on the forms and letters and envelopes and that sort of thing. At the bottom of a variety of these windows, you'll see a preferred method of contact. We have a general preferred method of contact, which may include a type of phone number or any number of other things. You can edit the list to say what you want, and that's just again for your reference. But off to the right, we have the appointments, birthdays, and recalls setup area, where if you set up that the patient prefers to receive things by text, when you send out an appointment announcement or a birthday announcement or recall, then it will automatically go to one of those 3 that you've assigned. So let's close that, and I'll show you down below. The same is true for additional phone numbers. It's using the same thing. How do they prefer to be contacted? And in this case, I can put in multiple phone numbers and say that this is a home number or a cell number or something like that. And I can put a comment showing that this may be a family member's phone number, and please don't call until after 9 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Now, when you enter a phone number, you can simply enter the digits. You don't have to put the parentheses or the space or the dash. It'll automatically format that for you. If you put a few extra digits there, then it will assume that that is an extension and add the letters EXT : and put the extension right there for you. Right here, we have a little bubble that will allow you to text patients their appointments directly from here. That's an older version or way that we used to do that, but we now have the ability up here, as you'll see in another video, where I can text or email or print a letter to the patient regarding their appointment. That will only work if I want to text the patient. It will only work if I ask them who their carrier is. And of course, that may be a little bit more difficult if someone is quite elderly, but a baby boomer may know the difference and that they're with AT&T or Verizon. And if not, you may have to check back with them another time. We can also designate a phone number, do not call, and that's just more of a courtesy to the patient, so that if they say, I prefer not to be called, you still may want their phone number, but you don't necessarily want to be calling them very often. So it turns it red and just kind of is an indication to the staff not to call that patient. When I enter a date of birth, I generally want to put, and this is one of the few fields where you want to put 4 digits for the year of their birth. So if the date of birth was 8/8/1939, you don't have to put 08, but you do have to put 8/8/1939. So please keep in mind that unlike other programs, you can't just put in raw numbers. You do have to use either a dash or a slash. Once I've done that, I can then click this button. I'm not going to show you now, but I could then find all my patients who have a birthday in a particular month by clicking the birthday cake here, or I can click a button and that will automatically send an email to Jennifer telling her about her birthday, and there's an area where you can set up a sentence, a paragraph, or a full page worth of comments that will go out as a text or something else. Now notice again, that is an envelope. If I change the designation here from email to, let's say, text, and I close that, and now it's changed to a text bubble. One more time, if you don't mind, I'm going to change that to say she prefers mail. to receive mail instead of a text, and now it's changed to a printer icon, and that will allow me again to send a birthday message through a printed letter. We have the date of the patient's, the age of the patient right next to the birth date, the gender, and then we have, as I remove the contents of this field, you'll see that it says family member underneath. As soon as I enter a family member, then off to the side, the field appears where I can designate what relationship that family member or perhaps a friend would have with the patient themselves. I would then enter an email address. I can check this box to the right of that area if I want to include that patient in a bulk emailing. Bulk email is not as widely accepted as it used to be because of spam filters and that sort of thing, and we can talk about that another time, but you can click a button and this envelope here, and it'll ask you if you want to send a single email to Jennifer, a group of emails at once to everyone who has a check mark in that box, or to your found set of isolated records. So again, to the right of that, we have our email addresses where we can have an unlimited number of email addresses, and you simply want to rank that highest ranked email address is where your correspondence will go to. As we go down a little bit further, I'm going to remove the words again so you can see that this is a primary referral source. We don't want the detail in this area. As soon as I remove that, then you'll notice the area off to the right is missing because you need to put a referral first, and as soon as I do, then this area to the right does pop up. Now I can click this button here to add referral sources right here and set those up appropriately. I'm going to close that though, and I can then use this area here to the first drop-down list, as it's called. I have 3 different ways of putting information in. The first drop-down list is going to find all previous patients who have a physician as their primary referral source and show me any previous entries. Now you may decide that none of those are appropriate, so you can simply type in a different name. You can also use a drop-down list which shows all physicians in your reference file, and that might have value. Here's all my different physicians there. And then finally, I can customize this list, which is going to be not specific to what's in the first field. That list will always put the same number of choices in the third choice area, not dependent upon what's in this first field. So in other words, play around with it and you'll see that you can enter information one of 3 different ways, making it a lot more choices than we used to have. Finally, we used to have the ability to add just one referral source, but now clicking this button here, you can add an unlimited number of referral sources. And you may want to put the date created so that you can know which is the most recent referral. But a patient may have been referred initially by their physician, and then 6 months later they came in because of a newspaper ad or a direct mail piece, and on and on and on. So you can now put an unlimited number of referral sources in the system there. As I scroll over to the side, this area here is a recall date. And I can have an unlimited number of recalls in the system. I won't get into the recall area now, but there's a button over to the left here that is a much more advanced recall area, but this shows the highest ranked recall here. And then we also have a recall reason. Now you can set up your recall reasons. Instead of just a simple phrase or word here, you can now put a whole paragraph or a whole page worth of comments so that when you select 1-year retest, when you actually send out your recall letter, it will automatically fill in the letter or the text. Let's just change this again back here to email as the preferred method. And I'll give you an example. I really like this change because it's going to make it so much easier for you to be able to send recalls to all of your patients, and each one unique depending on what the purpose of the recall is. So I can find all my recalls by clicking a button. It says I have 13 here. I can view them as a list. So I can now send a recall to that patient individually by clicking this button and their preferred method of contact. It filled in just a sentence here. It's been about a year since we last tested your hearing, but you can have it put in a really nice several paragraphs with one click and send that off to the patient, and then they've been communicated with. The history is recorded behind the scenes that you did in fact send a letter or a text or an email to that patient. But we also have the ability, as I'll show you right up here with this little button, I can actually find everybody, for example, who is marked as male. I can constrain those, and then I can click a button and it will print a recall letter with the unique information for each patient onto all 4 of these, or 40, or however many you have. I could do the same thing to all patients who have email or text, send them one at a time, or send them as a group. So it makes it really simple to be able to do your emails. And you can play around with that, and I think it'll make sense after a little bit. So as we scroll over just a little bit more, we have an area where I can enter a clinician's initials. By changing the initials, it updates the photograph, and that patient then is assigned on the home screen to Mary or Robin or John, and his or her signature will automatically appear on a variety of forms, letters, and reports, and his or her photograph will also appear if desired. You can set up, by clicking this little button here, you can set up all of your clinicians just by clicking that button and adding their initials, their name, and other information there. Real simple to enter a photograph. You simply right-click and insert the picture from a folder that you might have on your computer. And you can also right-click and insert a signature. We're happy to help you crop that if you're not familiar with how to crop a signature, but if you could have your audiologist or dispenser sign a white piece of paper with a relatively bold pen, then if you send that to us, we will crop it for you and get it just the right size so you can insert that. And it's just really a nice way to get a signature onto a variety of forms and letters if desired. As we go a little bit further, we can set up our office locations here, and you can add a separate logo for each location if desired, or the same logo, and then you would assign that patient to an appropriate office location here. And we're almost finished. The final thing that I'm going to show you now is our notices area. When I click that, I'm going to zoom back just a little bit so you can see it better. This is actually designed for an iPad, and it fits just right on a standard iPad. Here you can preview. It's not going to look properly there because it pops up and fills up my whole 30-inch screen, but it wouldn't normally be cut off. But here's the your notice of privacy practices area, so you can very easily work with that. You can print that or email it to the patient. Just click a button and it will pull up and send that email right to the patient, so that there it is right there. And that way you never actually had to print anything, just in case they actually wanted a copy of your privacy practice notices. So there it is, and we can customize that for your own needs, or you can have it yourself if desired. We can also do a number of other things here, so let's go back and see if I can get back there. The way I'm doing this is kind of a backwards way without the iPad or iPhone. But I can have the patient, I can print or email their privacy receipt after they've signed it. So using an iPad or an iPhone, they can just tap the X and then sign that. And there is little additional information here that they can see if desired. And the same is true of your advanced beneficiary notice. So I can preview that if desired. It doesn't look very good when it's so small like this, but it looks normally a lot better on an iPad. You can read it very easily, and it's interactive. So the patient can sign it, they can click a button, they can fill out that information and put that information in right here. So I'm going to close that, and when you do, we're almost done here, when you do the put a signature for any of those notices, then that information will automatically change the color of the button. I believe it's lavender in one case and pink in another case and blue or green, and if both of them are signed, something to that effect. But it's just a nice way to be able to send out your forms and have patients sign everything right up front. So that's a real quick overview of Section A. And we're going to cover other sections in subsequent videos, but I very much appreciate you taking time to watch this. Thank you.